The Druid is one of the most underrated classes in Baldur's Gate 3, so in this video I'll be ranking all the 4 different subclasses on a tier list from best to worst. This is what it feels like to play Druid sometimes. Between the 4 different subclasses, the Land Druid is like a caster hybrid. All of them get the ability to go into wild shape, giving them extra health, but the Land Druid is like a dedicated caster, although I don't think it's the absolute best caster here. We also have the Circle of the Moon, which is focused on its wild shape, and this is very strong. One of the most powerful builds in the game utilizes the Myrmidon forms that you get at level 10. The Circle of the Spores is a caster summoner hybrid, which is kind of like a necromancer. They got their fungal zombies and their symbiotic entity form to keep themselves alive with the extra temporary health. And the Circle of the Stars, which is again like a support class. Almost similar to the light cleric subclass, this gets the ability to protect your teammates. You can heal or you can dish out radiant damage. We'll first start off with the Circle of the Land Druid, which you do get your wild shape forms here, and you also get the ability to use natural recovery. Similar to the Wizard, which can recover up to a level 5 spell slot, so can you with your natural recovery. Now, the Land Druid's all about getting their different circles of the land at every odd level. This gives us some access to spells that we typically wouldn't get, like Cone of Cold. Now, some of them give us spells that we normally would get access to, like Hold Person or Spike Growth. But then there's other options like the Coast here, which gives us Mirror Image and Misty Step, which typically the Land Druid does not get. There's some fun build combinations here, but I wouldn't say it's the most powerful subclass. Despite getting some fun damage spells like Lightning Bolt, their damage output will be less than a Sorcerer or a Wizard. So if you want to cast spells, it's a choice, but you do get a lot of defensive bonuses from your wild shape. There's a tough decision here because you can get Haste or Lightning Bolt. So yeah, you really got some decisions to make. I would not recommend taking any of the spells that you would normally get from the Druid, as you're going to have to you'll be able to prepare many spells. You also get the Ranger ability with the Landstride difficult terrain, so you don't get slowed down by difficult terrain, which is nice to have. And the Owlbear form is always just nice to have on anyone for the extra health that you can bring. One of the things that would separate this from another caster is the ability to get your Grasping Vine and Conjure Woodland Being. Now, Larian has updated Grasping Vine to make it much better than it was at launch because it now uses a bonus action, creates difficult terrain, and can pull enemies towards it. With the Woodland Being, you get a summon that can hold your Spike Growth concentration, and then also create another summon which can entangle enemies. This is a really good combination for crowd control, which is the big edge over any other type of caster that you could play, and the circles at level 7 aren't anything exciting. Once we hit level 9, we get another very powerful spell with Cone of Cold, one of my favorites in the game because it's doubled with water, which we can set up ourselves. Now, the nice thing about this is we have lots of forms of crowd control. You can even use the Snowburst Ring to create ice surfaces below the enemy, so you can set up difficult terrain in certain areas. If they move towards you, you can then hit them with the Cone of Cold. So this is all about casting with crowd control. But another cool combination is if you got Cloud Kill here, which normally would hurt your team, you can actually make it so your team doesn't get hurt if you have Hero's Feast, which removes the poison damage specifically from just this attack. Every Druid gets the extra 2 attacks in Wild Shape at level 10, which is nice. So if you go into Wild Shape, you're not going to be useless. You can actually do 3 attacks when you're Wild Shape form. They're not going to be as strong as normal weapon attacks, but they're still something really great. You also get the Nature's Ward, which you can't be charmed or frightened by elementals and fae, which is not super good, but disease and poison no longer affects you, which is actually pretty nice. You also get the Dilophosaurus form, which can reduce armor class of enemies. And as mentioned, Hero's Feast with Cloud Kill are really good. Now, one of the things with the natural recovery, which is one of the main points of this class, you can only create spell slots that you've expended. Now, you may have some mods as what you do a level 6 spell slot, but it's only supposed to be up to level 5. It says not found there. So some mods could interact, especially if you're using UI mods. Now, another thing with this is with that spell recovery, you can get a free summon basically, which is nice. So you can bring in your Conjure Elemental, your Woodland Being, or your Minor Elemental for free, or even your Grasping Vine if you want to use that. In all honesty, though, I do think that the Land Druid is one of the worst of the 4 because while it's still good with the extra health, you're probably better off if you want to be a caster playing as a Wizard or a Sorcerer or even a Warlock, a Bard even. This gets good spell selection with things like Cone of Cold and Lightning Bolt for damage, but even at that, you're better off probably even playing like a Tempest Domain Cleric. It just feels like a bit lackluster in terms of its damage output compared to some others. It does have a lot of survivability though, because you do have 2 wild shape charges, 3 if you use an item, and then you can go into your Owlbear form for a bit of extra health here. So we'll have 94 health there, and you can go into Owlbear form a couple times, which will extend your life significantly and can actually help out quite a bit. But unlike the other Druids, you actually have to use your full action to be able to go into your wild shape. Unlike the other Druids, which can use a bonus action, so you can't attack, you mostly just tank damage. So I would actually have to say that the Land Druid is going to go into the B tier, and we'll focus on the wild shape version of the Druid next. The Moon Druid being able to do a bonus action transform is huge because this still lets them attack whenever they transform that turn, which is really huge. We also get the Lunar Mend here, which can replenish our health using a bonus action while we're in a wild shape. We expend spell slots, pretty useful. And we also get the Bear form, which gives us 30 health right at level 2. And the Moon Druid can pop down things like Spike Growth before they go into their wild shape form, which is really nice too, so they can actually hold concentrations. Level 5 gives a really big power spike because we get not only Sleet Storm for stopping enemy spellcasters, but we also get that extra attack like other martial classes. And then at level 6, we get the Primal Strike, which helps us overcome resistance and immunity to non-magical damage, which is actually a really big buff because there's a lot of enemies that are resistant or even immune to physical damage, which we can now bypass. We also get the Owlbear form, which is one of the best in the game. You can do the Crushing Leap there to do a lot of damage. Again, the Druid spell list is pretty great. You get Ice Storm, Wall of Fire, Woodland Being, Minor Elemental. A lot of these you can cast before you go into combat, which is really great. You also get the Saber-Toothed Tiger here, which can shred armor and regenerate health points. Level 10 is when they get their big buff. They get your Air Myrmidon, which is my favorite, the Earth, Fire, and Water. Now, Water Myrmidon works a little differently after patch 8. It's no longer as overpowered, but my personal preference is the Air Myrmidon, which I'll show off because it can stun enemies. You can stun 3 targets per turn. That's 3 actions that your team doesn't have to deal with. Oddly enough, it's actually a good idea to multiclass into something like the Fighter to give yourself proficiency in weapons for the Myrmidon forms. And then you can also start with a single level of the Sorcerer, so that will give you the ability to cast Armor of Agathis on yourself too. Giving yourself the weapon proficiencies and Armor of Agathis is a really good choice because at level 10 you get all these subclass features. The Moon Druid has a lot of options for their wild shape. All throughout the game, again, Cave Bear, even as the regular bear is going to be a good choice. But once you get level 10, you get this guy here, which is very powerful because it's got its main hand attack is never what you want to use. You actually want to use the Electrified Flail. Despite looking like the Thunderbolt or Lightning Bolt attack, you can use this 3 times per turn. So you do that attack there. He failed to save, but you can stun a target with this, which is huge because once you stun a target, he lost his turn. So that's huge because then you can move on to another target and you can just ignore them because when they're stunned, nothing happens. They don't even get to fight. So really huge amounts of damage. But you also get the ability to silence enemies with your Raging Vortex, which is a huge area of effect that you can pop down on the ground. This does use your whole action, but silencing and doing bludgeoning damage is like a better version of the silence spell anyways. You can also turn the Air Myrmidon invisible, so it's got a bit of stealth. And you have more range than really anyone else because you can do the Elemental Warp, which is basically Misty Step without expending a spell slot. Very, very useful. And then on top of that, you got the Lunar Mend. So if you want to use a level 4 spell slot, it's a D8 die per level that you use. So you got to be thinking about yourself long term. 90 health on this, and then you can boost this up further. If you got someone else in your team with Hero's Feast and the Aid spell to give yourself a lot of health. And there's actually armor for the Moon Druid. This is one of the only items that works while you're in your wild shape, giving you 22 extra temporary health, reducing all incoming damage by 1 while you have that temporary health, plus 2 to armor class advantage and saving throws against spells, which is huge. Like, this is actually crazy. And in all honesty, this is probably the best for any druid. Even if you're going with the armor landfall from the land druid, it's kind of not great. It only gives you 1d4 health per turn on a viney surface, plus 1 to spell save DC and plant growth, which is okay. And then the Spore Keeper druid armor gives you the haste ability, which is pretty crazy, an area of effect haste. But I would actually say the Armor Moonbasking is one of the best just because it gives you huge benefits while you're in your wild shape. Something to keep in mind though is that the Myrmidon forms take 2 wild shape charges, so that's something. But even the bear form is pretty good. It gives you extra 86 health that you can go into. I prefer going with the Owl Bear, but this is the Goading Roar, and then you can just do claw attacks, which are pretty decent as well because you can actually Goading Roar in quite a large area of effect. It works most times actually pretty effectively since the bear actually has a low armor class. So yeah, reduce our armor class down to 13, or if we use the armor, it'd be 15 AC, so that you're getting a lot of aggro pulled your way. So the Moon Druid, it's tanky. Actually, one of the tankiest builds in the game with the amount of temporary health that you can get with 3 wild shape charges. You can put on the Owlbear form multiple times for a lot of health. It also does a good amount of damage. The Air Myrmidon, my favorite, being able to stun enemies multiple times, is best condition in the game. This is an easy S tier. The Moon Druid is the most, I would say, underrated class in the game. Since you do get Halston that plays as him, some people don't play with Halston, so they don't end up using the bear forms or Owlbear form, anything like that. Even Halston gets his own unique bear form that he can go into. But overall, yeah, this is S tier easily. Now, the thing is, the Star Druid is honestly quite great as well. What it brings to the table is its starry form. So you can go into the Archer, Chalice, or Dragon forms. These don't give you extra health, but they give you a lot of extra benefits, and you can do a bonus action ability with all of them. So we got Guidance as well. We get the Guiding Bolt, which uses a special star map charge. So you can use this to set up advantage on attack rolls for your team. With the Archer form, you get the Luminous Arrow, which is a bonus action attack, which does a 1d8 damage and can apply radiating orbs pretty well. The Chalice, whenever you cast a healing spell, you can cast another one. Healing in this game isn't as good as it would be in like tabletop D&D. It's an okay action, but I would prefer dishing out damage. And the Dragon, which has one of the most powerful abilities in the game, when you make a saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, the lowest that you can roll is a 10. So that means that every time that you get hit with 10 damage, you're going to hold your concentration guaranteed. Pretty crazy ability. And then also on top of that, you can cast Dazzling Breath, which is very broken because it's a cone with radiant damage, which can apply radiating orbs. Now, as I said earlier, this is kind of like the light domain cleric in a way. It's because you get the Cosmic Omen. So whenever you long rest, you can consult the stars for Cosmic Omen, a wheel, or woe. This grants you the ability to increase or decrease attack rolls or saving throws, and or to increase your allies' ability checks. So this can be a lifesaver because you can use this ability to save your teammates, turning their attack rolls into a negative so they don't end up getting hit by an enemy. So this is very useful, and it's the same level you get the Owlbear form. So level 6 is a really good power spike here. So this actually multi-class as well if you want to add in, let's say, the Wizard, like the Bladesing Wizard for the 2 attacks, and you can combine spell casting levels. Oddly enough, pretty good combination. Since the Wizard doesn't really have the best bonus action abilities, you can then use the Dazzling Breath or the Luminous Arrow to do extra damage. Level 9 gives you another Cosmic Omen and Star Map, so you actually get your resources pretty common. Once we hit level 10, we get the increase of healing from the Chalice by 1d8. The damage from the arrow is also increased by 1d8. And then the Dragon gets the ability to hover and fly at a movement speed of 6 meters. And they also get a damage boost as well. So that's actually pretty nice. So you have your wild shape forms here. I really like the Dragon personally because that boost to your concentrations is huge. And then the Dazzling Breath doing a 4d6 of damage plus 3 radiant. Add your wisdom modifier, it's pretty huge. So you do the Dazzling Breath attack there. It looks cool, applies radiating orbs. You can then also fly as the dragon. The forms themselves look really cool with these stars appearing around your character. And then you can also switch between these forms at will whenever you get to a level 10 there. So we went into the dragon here. So to be able to apply this, we actually have to use the Cure Wounds spell first. And once you cast a healing spell, then you get the Chalice Healing, which does 2d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So it's an okay choice if you want to be able to heal a target a lot. Like we got an 8 out of our bonus action. That's not terrible. And then you can also pop her down and go into the Archer form if you so please. And this gives you Luminous Arrow doing a 2d8 plus your wisdom modifier. It looks really cool. And this can also apply radiating orbs. It has a longer radius of 18 meters. So this is even better than the Dazzling Breath, which is close range. But the nice thing is you can switch between these freely. We're getting 2 critical misses there, so yeah, that's why I prefer the dragon form. Just being able to hold your concentrations is a massive benefit, especially when our concentrations can be like confusion or we got lots of great spells to choose from. The druid has so many great concentration spells, so depends on if you want to hold up like Wall of Thorns, for example, Insect Plague, which is great crowd control. You can even do Wall of Fire, make sure you don't drop that in the mid game. Call Lightning and continually keep casting that in the mid game, or Sleet Storm. So yeah, this class, I think, benefits greatly from a dip into the Wizard. I love multi-class with the Wizard, especially in patch 8. They really buff things up. But honestly, I think that the Star Druid is very good. It's got 4 Cosmic Omens you can use to protect your team with. This is one of the best new subclasses in patch 8, and I think one that people underrate quite a bit. I'd have to say this is like a high A tier. I'm going to put it in the low S tier just because Druid is really good. You bring a lot of value playing as a Druid. You got Wild Shape so that you get extra health. Like if you didn't even want to use these the Twilight forms, you can actually just go in, like if you need extra health, in a pinch you could just pop Owlbear form down, which will then take your 137 and give you 112 extra health. And if you had the armor on, that's like a 130 health. Hero's Feast, you know, you can actually buff this up quite a bit. And then the cool thing is, while you're in this wild shape, you can actually turn yourself into one of the other forms freely. So yeah, if you need to go back into your caster form, you get a free disappear, basically get out of jail free card. So yeah, I feel safe putting this in the S tier. High A tier if you don't like, I guess, the abilities that come with it. But I think personally, strength-wise, it's pretty strong. Now, Circle of Spore is one of my favorite subclasses in the game, actually, because it's a fun version of a Necromancer. But if you don't like controlling undead, or I guess most of these don't have to control, but if you don't like the idea of having multiple undead with you, some people don't like Necromancers, that's perfectly A-okay. With this one, you use your Wild Shape charges to go into your Symbiotic Entity form. So this gives you 4 temporary health, but this does scale up much higher. And then when you have that health, you do additional 1d6 of necrotic damage, and you can cast Halo of Spores, which does 1d4, which then do a 1d8 of damage, which is pretty nice. And then you also get the Bone Chill cantrip. You also get Blindness and the Detect Thought spells, but it gets much better as you continue to go on through this level. It's the Animate Dead spell you get at level 5, which is a start to what we can actually do a crazy amount of damage with if you get a lot of summons going. It's then the level 6 Fungal Infestation. This uses your reaction. So we actually use reaction for a lot of our abilities. Raise a mildewed mold across a zombie from a corpse, which can then also raise zombies from corpses. It's pretty crazy what you can do with this. However, they don't have a whole lot of health. You also get spells like Blade, Confusion, Cloud Kill, and Contagion there, which are just great. Cloud Kill being, again, a really good spell if you got Hero's Feast equipped, because you can just go into those and your zombies won't get hit by poison damage. But once we level 10, we get the Spreading Spores. While Symbiotic Entity is active, you can create a cloud of spreading spores. So I'll show off what all this looks like. You also get the Dilophosaurus form too, but we're typically going to want to be summoning and casting. So here you can see the reaction Fungal Infestation. When we take on an enemy, you can then raise a zombie from their corpse. So boom, there you go. You got yourself your undead zombie there. When it takes out an enemy, that also, it basically just summons another one. It also has the Undead Fortitude. If the killing blow wasn't a critical hit and it wasn't radiant damage, this undead come back to life with 1 health point. And it can also do opportunity attacks, which would be a surprise. That's where a lot of its damage actually comes from. With 16 Constitution, 16 Strength, and like no Dexterity, it's not going to evade much, but it's there just to soak up some extra hits for your team and dish out extra damage. And the Spore Druid also has some of the coolest animations here, like the Symbiotic Entity, the dance that your character does. Super cool. I love this. It's one of those coolest classes. But being able to raise these up and then do your Hail of Spores is pretty nice. It's a good amount of extra damage, so you can go ahead there. We took it out and it wasn't actually actual damage, so it comes back up with 1 health there. So it's pretty fun. The nice thing is you can also use your Animate Dead spell, which you get level 3 versions, so the skeletons and zombies, level 5 versions with the flying ghouls, zombie battalions, and skeleton squads. I would recommend using like the flying ghouls if you can, because they are actually pretty strong. This also multi-class as well with the Necromancer Wizard, because at level 6, they get the ability to summon 2 for the price of 1. But the flying ghouls are actually pretty effective. You may remember them in the game. They also can devour if there's a prone or sleeping target to give yourself the basically sustainability, because they can keep healing themselves. Now, this is a really good if you really like summons, because you can get going with a ton of them, and that's really where it shines. You also can use the Staff of Cherished Necromancy pretty well in this build, because it gives you the ability to keep casting necromancy-based spells with the Life Essence Harvest there, so that's good, especially if you got a dip in the Wizard, which can learn Circle of Death. And then what we can do with the Spore Druid armor is we actually get some very special abilities here. So you get this, you have Spreading Spores here, Tin Mask Spores, Haste Spores, and the Bitter Bang Spores, which can create noxious fumes. Now, the Haste Spores are pretty big, because you can see here, we now have 5 people on our team with Haste. That is obviously pretty crazy. So you just have to walk into the Spore zone there, and you get that extra bonus, which is huge, because that gives you an extra action, obviously very powerful. So this is something you can actually use quite a bit. And the Spreading Spores is an okay option to be able to create an area that's going to deal damage over time. So the Spreading Spores does a bit of necrotic damage, and everyone except you and your allies will end up taking damage from it. And it uses a bonus action. So that's great, because you can kind of crowd control with that, and also all the other spells that the Druid gets access to. So Circle of the Spores Druid, I also think this is an S tier pick. I'm going to put it above the Circle of the Stars there, just because its pure damage can get pretty crazy with the amount of zombies and stuff that you can summon in. The Circle of the Stars is just great. I would actually, as I mentioned, I would have put it high A, but I think it also just belongs, yeah, we might go somewhere around there. I don't want to have too much in the S tier. I do think that these two stand a little bit above the rest in terms of their overall, not only damage output, the utility they bring to the team, the healing and all the extra uses that their spell slots bring, whereas the Land Druid is just like a caster. You could obviously just take like a wizard, a sorcerer, or something like that, and get some pretty great results as well. But yeah, the Druid is a very underrated class, I would say, in Baldur's Gate 3. Let me know your favorites of the subclasses in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I hope you have a great day. We'll catch y'all in the next video.